Everybody, hello Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. I'm gonna play game in 10 minutes per side. Okay, it's a good win. If my opponent offers me a rematch, I'll take it. I'm not going to offer one myself. I feel that the game I've just finished is quality enough game to review with you, my Gravitrons, my watchers. Uh, anyone watching? It looks like it was a rook drop at the end, but there was a lot of. Um, it was more than that. It was more than that. It was much more than a rook drop at the end. There was some strategic and tactical play intermingled, and they say you have to win 3 games to win a game of chess. You got to win the opening, you got to win the middle game, and you got to win the end game. I'm not sure who would say that. Yeah, the terms are general. Like they'll bring up a lot of chess stuff, but not necessarily specifically who said this particular quote. So sorry about that. I'm not exactly sure then who said that, but you got to win 3 times or 3 games to win a game of chess. You got to win the opening, you got to win the middle game, and you got to win the end game. Of course, this is not always true, but the sentiment is there to understand. Sometimes you need to win multiple battles in order to actually win. Overall, 87.3, 75.2. This is mostly an accurate game of chess and a good one. Let's finish out to practice. Finish out to checkmate in practice here. I'm very confident that I can secure the win here, as the best move wins. The best from here, White's best move wins not 1, but 2 rooks. Noting that black has moves to make to avoid a stalemate. Alright, this is the game finished out to checkmate. We're going to respect our opponent and his, her, or their decision to resign. I've recently thought about this. Very recently thought about this, and I said, the person resigns there. We'll do our best to respect that often enough. It's the way it is. Alright, my opponent resigned here, and we're going to go back to the beginning. Let me walk you through this game of chess. Okay, so Philidor defense is introduced by the move pawn to d6 on move 2 by black. It's said to be solid, and it also blocks in black's dark squared bishop. It's one of the granddaddy of chess openings and defenses. Torch 4 evaluates this position as more than half a pawn in white's favor, and that's in addition to it's about 4/10 of a pawn more than the starting 2/10 of a pawn in white's favor. I don't play it myself. How many different ways can I disrespect this opening? Okay, because it's not good. You are gonna pry things open right away as white. Here on move 3, 1, 2, 3 as the Germans count. 1, 2, 3 as many Americans count. Actually, 1, 2, 3 that's mostly European, not just German. probably highlighting my German heritage. So we're on move 3. White's ready to pry open the position. And there's a number of ways for black to respond. I mean, I think capturing on d4 is fine. And we get some kind of Marcosi bind-like structure not long thereafter with the pawns on c4 and e4, a knight on c3, and a knight on d4 early. Some of the themes will go with what's called the Marcosi bind. Marcosi. The Marcosi bind. The Marcosi bind. It's an important chess structure. That's if you capture with the knight. You can capture with the queen, and there are some really awesome lines from that. I think it's still considered book and all that. I don't know White really needs to offer his queen up as a target quite yet. So sticking to principle, knight takes d4 is fine. But I was gonna say something else. We were on black's turn. Black captured in the center. Sometimes black will be more passive. There are answers to knight c6. You might just want to instigate the trades as even after knight c6, and after knight f6 you can usually pretty much instigate the trades when you have to worry about white has to worry about his e4 pawn. So that's sort of from both sides of the board. I'd say that's some of the ins and outs of this chess opening that has a lot more to it than what I just said. But those are some of the most basic things you'll want to know about the Philidor defense. It's a defense that black employs against e4, e5, knight f3, and then the definitive move, pawn to d6. Right. a6. I'm critical of this move. a6, I mean, is there really nothing better to do as early as move 4 and your opponent's more developed than to play a6? I don't like that. You can trade off a very active piece for a piece on the starting grid if you're okay with doubled pawns. a6. I can understand that knight f6 might not be your first guess because of complications around black's king, but if you've resigned to the Philidor, you know that bishop e7 is passive and happens. So I'm very critical of a6 here. On the other hand, I mean, the b5 square is highlighted and more important than b5 usually is. So a6 to control b5 is another way of viewing that. c4. So the computer has mild criticism with good instead of excellent or great or anything like that. c4 is just meant to pave the way for knight to c3 in a way that the c pawn isn't just sitting here on c2 doing not all that much. On c4, the c pawn enjoys an active life, beaming towards, or beaming, is it really beaming towards d5? It's attacking d5 or helping to control d5, and this just generally helps White's strategy of controlling the center by occupying with pawns and pieces, as well as controlling from a distance with pieces. Alright. h6. I mean, I was glad to see it in the game, or was I? Did I pay attention, or was I more concerned about my next move? h6, I'm sorry, but this is too passive. There's way more action coming from developing the pieces on the back rank. And knight f5, perhaps this was my bad, that in a position like this, to put knight f5 out there without being provoked even, denies the fact that the d4 square is his home, and he's safe enough there against most attacks except for perhaps c5. I played knight f5 prematurely, I'd say. Not exactly. Part of me wanted to prevent a bishop e7 because I still think that this bishop e7 move is coming sooner or later, and it prevents bishop e7 for a while. So, because if black plays that immediately, then knight takes g7 check, right? And black's in a really bad position. His king will have to move, and white's also ahead of pawn. But Son's bishop e7, I think I might have been a little bit quick on the attack here. My opponent captured on f5, and like I've said this in previous broadcasts, but I'll say it again. E takes f5. This pawn, whichever pawn it may be, it could be the g pawn or the e pawn. Sometimes it's the f pawn after it, but it's usually the e pawn capturing towards f. We'll go with usually. That pawn on f5 seems strangely difficult for black to handle. It seems like, first of all, it's a pawn you might say, oh, that's way on my side without support, I'll just pick it up when it makes sense. But then you look at it and you think, like, how is black gonna capture on f5? What, you can't just let this pawn sit there for the rest of the game, controlling some very important squares near black's king. So just mostly this pawn is safer than it seems. I don't know why. It always seems when the pawn gets to f5, he's safer than usual. Knight c6 is a fine move, developing, leaving options open for kingside or queenside castling. Queen e2 check. You could debate this move. What really is white hoping to accomplish from this? This is, on the one hand, blocking my own light squared bishop in. It gets this check. If I want to be without queens, I can sometimes instigate that. Black can always just cover with bishop e7, right? And then castles continue and the threat's gone. That on the one hand. And on the other hand, we're going to see later on in the game how powerful the f1 bishop can be in a different developing square. Just keep that in mind. There's good fortune, luck, and some acumen involved. But so the bishop wants to be here or here if there weren't a pawn there, or even here if it's the Roy Lopez. But in this game in particular, it actually serves white very well by leaving him at f1 for the moment. Bishop e7. We knew it was coming sooner or later, so I sort of wanted to play bishop e3 as a way to block attacks on the e file. I'd rather lose the bishop than my queen, or whatever it is. I wouldn't really want to lose the bishop because then I'm a piece down. But queen to d7. Playing queenside castles. Queenside castles is the move here because the bishop is relatively stuck, and the king needs to get the heck out of the center with an open e file and a lot of force behind a potential black attack. So he's got to get to c1, and that's what I did. He's at c1. It's actually reasonably safe there. Knight d5. Just finding the outpost. Yes, I know that this knight can move, and then my knight can be booted or captured straight away. But you just want to sort of there's a little bit of probing for weakness. A sleight of the hand, and my opponent has knight takes c7 check against him, and he's losing a pawn in the exchange for he's losing a pawn and a rook for a knight. If he even captures that knight, which actually in that variation most likely is going to capture that knight, just as my initial guess there. But so wisely taking the knight on d5 off. My opponent chose to move his knight to d5. Captured back with tempo. I don't know, maybe there's something to why that move isn't quite as good as it should be. Part of this that this rook is light years. So the people say light years to mean like a long time. Light years are the same amount of time in years, but it's the distance that light can travel in that year, which is a long way. Tip for you budding scientists out there. But the rook on d5 won't likely be supported by another rook anytime soon. So that's part of it. And then this boot here on c6. I don't know. I thought this move was alright when I played it first, but torch is critical with inaccuracy. Noting it as an inaccuracy. Bishop d2, and I'm saying a pawn down that I know how to play the endgame. Also, I was a bit scared of knight b4. a2 is loose. c2 is gone, or is all the way at the c4 square. There's a queen about. Soon enough, there's a mating threat on c2. You know, this is looking like fertile ground for a very strong queenside attack on white's king. Bishop f6 crashing in, right? So I didn't want to have that to deal with that. Plus, these pawns on b and a could be useful in a pawn storm. They descend upon the position quicker than it seems. Bishop to d2 controls b4, and the knight isn't going to start a strong attack there. And then also, depending on how black moves, I'll trade queens. A pawn down, so technically that's not the thing, but I'm a little bit confident in my endgame skills. Most situations, most games. All right, queen to d7. And white finds the key here, the key move, and best move, h4. This is when you want to start a pawn. This is one of the ways you want to start a pawn storm. There's not much else to move around or attack or loosen or strengthen on your own defenses. The main thing to do is this position is mostly settled. Black's got a castle, but this position is mostly settled. So I start with h4, pawn storm, and paying attention and gaining space. All right, so you see this, you start thinking, f5's not going to stop it. The knight can't get to e6. The knight can't get to f5. g7's not going to stop it. Let's try strengthening that pawn. You might have thought we were doing a pawn storm, but we're actually making a very solid and safe structure on white's king side. More of a structural strength so I can focus on my attacking pieces. Other than that, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. It's all good. Nothing to see here. And bishop f6 so as to aim right into white's queen side where white has castled, and then the kill, as kitty cat would say, here comes the killer blow. Here comes the killing blow. Bishop to h3, and this skewer cannot be prevented. Mostly just trading pieces, working some of these moves. You might find this a little bit boring, like trading pieces, simplifying, getting to an endgame, you can win, things like that. But engineering those piece trades is not always easy, my friends. capture on e5, and rook captures back. I thought that was good because of the piece trade, but also because now g7 is weak. As soon as it went, g7's going to fall most likely, and then there's two additional pawns that are weak, and so I thought it was a worthy. It was a move to play because of how well it simplifies. And then capturing on e8 with check. Only move is king to a7, which loses the rook. Also, of course, to queen to e7 check, and it's lights out. All right. Wanted to see how this game would be rated on the game played out to checkmate as I showed here. But yeah. All right, so still accurate, slightly more accurate with the additional moves. Not a big deal. Let's. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.